Hello there, my friend. Welcome back to the Lucky Titan podcast. I'm so very excited to have you here. And hey, welcome to 2023. We made it. And guys, to kick off this new year, I have been holding an interview that we've had in our library for the last few months. I've been holding it in reserve because this interview is incredible. I was able to sit down with one of my marketing heroes, Roland Frasier, to discuss a topic that a lot of you probably haven't considered at this point in your business. And that is the topic of acquisitions. Now, before you pause the interview and you step away and you say, okay, I'm going to just move on to the next episode, wait. This episode, talking about acquisitions, we're going to show you here today with Roland Frasier and I, we're going to show you how to actually get into a business completely for free. Now, you might be looking at it going, I'm not quite ready for this or anything, but I want you to listen to this interview and consider all of the different ways you could leverage other people's businesses they've already built to scale your own business, something I am very, very excited to show you. And Roland shares a secret here today that I think all of you need to hear about marketing. So go in here, dive into the interview, listen, because he's going to share with you his tactic to actually scale businesses, especially marketing businesses, quickly. Now, before we dive into the interview as well, I want to share with you a message from one of our sponsors. Now, a lot of you are saying, whoa, Josh, you have sponsors now. Yes, I do. And I'm so excited because this sponsor is more than just a sponsor. This is somebody I truly love partnering with. I've already told you guys the story of how I found these guys, but I want to share a message that they shared with me that I thought was so brilliant. These guys have worked with some of the top names. Okay, they've worked with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. They've worked with Ryan Deiss, digital marketers, some of these top names in the space. And what they do is they actually repurpose content that you've already produced. So let me ask you this. Have you already had an episode of content that you're like, man, that was incredible? Or maybe you spoke on stage and you had a really, really good talk and you're like, man, I really wish I could share that and repurpose that and put it all across my social media channels. That's what Repurpose House does. And guys, we have a really special opportunity for you to just skip the line and go straight into a conversation with these guys. So you can go to repurposehouse.com/Titan. And if you go to that link, it'll actually allow you to book a time specifically with their team, skip the line, and get a chance to discuss with them repurposing your content. Now, I'm going to give you a couple use cases here because I would hope all of you would leverage this. What I want you to do is I want you to go to repurposehouse.com/Titan and book a time with them. And then before you meet with them, I want you to go and sit down. I want you to take 2 minutes and look through the library of content that you've produced and then pick your best pieces of content, give it to them and watch what they will do. It's magic. I've used these guys. Some of the top names have used these guys, one of the best companies out there. So once again, the link is repurposehouse.com/Titan. Go check it out. We'll catch you on the flip side. And guys, this is a guest I've actually been really looking forward to. You've probably seen his ads. This guy's been everywhere. The first time I saw Roland was in his ads. And I remember going, someday I got to meet that guy. And funny enough, I met another guy who's kind of in a similar space, Carl Allen. And I asked Carl, I'm like, do you know Roland? And he's like, I know of Roland. And anyway, so years later, here we are. I should remember going, it was about 2 months ago. I said, man, I've got to actually bring him on my show because Roland, guys, if you haven't heard of him, Roland Frasier is the guy who is I would almost say acquisitions happy. I mean, he's done over 1,000 acquisitions, is it over 1,000 exits now, Roland? Is that correct?
It's combination. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Acquisitions and exits. But on top of that, this guy's been featured at Forbes and all sorts of other amazing places. I could read his rap sheet for days, but here's the thing, guys. He's a big deal. So that's why he's here. He's here to stoke his ego, push his buttons here a bit. And we're going to get some really great stuff out of him today. So Roland, thank you so much for coming on today. And I want to ask you something just to kind of kick this off. What's something outside of acquisitions right now that's got you stoked that you're very, very excited about and running towards?
In business or just anything?
In life. I just want to know in life, what's got you excited right now?
Yeah, so many things, but I just got back from 3 weeks in France. I was in Burgundy for a week and then Bordeaux for 2 weeks. And I've managed to get plugged into a really cool group of people up there. And they just sent me actually today a little plot of land with some vines on it right next to one of my favorite wines that has a little mini chateau on it and stuff. So I'm kind of excited about checking that out and seeing what's going on there. So I'm trying to, they say that the best way to make a small fortune in wine is to start with a large one. So I'm trying to make a small fortune in wine. That's my goal.
Do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?
I do. Well? Yeah.
Okay. Cause I would say he's probably the one who's like sicking you on this. And I'm going to have to apologize to everybody right now. I just realized I'm recording on the wrong microphone, but you know what? We're going to keep it raw and real here today. So, Roland, it's interesting to me that so many people have been going that route down the vineyard route. And what's interesting is it also seems to be the one that most people fail in. I'm kind of curious, how come you think you're going to succeed in it over somebody else?
Well, I'm not really doing it as a commercial thing. I'm doing it as a passion thing, which I think is the best way to do it. But I mean, if you're in the right spot, it's all about the land. So if you have the terroir where the grapes are good and you can, you're not doing something huge. This is just a couple of hectares. So it would do about 10 to 12,000 bottles a year. And you're not in it to make money. You're in it to make art. I think that you can't fail because, I guess you can be a crappy artist, but I think okay.
In your own eyes, you can't fail. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's funny is to me, I was curious about that because I feel like a lot of times people launch businesses like that going, oh, I'm going to make millions and millions of dollars doing it. But the people who actually succeed are what you just mentioned, right? It's more of a passion project. It really doesn't matter if it fails because it's for you. It's not for the world, but the world's going to benefit from it, which is so dang cool.
And I think you won't take shortcuts. If you're not in it for the money, you won't do things for the expediency or the profit as much as you'll do it for the art of whatever it is that you're doing. And so that is really kind of where I'm coming from. To me, it's a lifestyle fun thing. I love the community. I love I've got a lot of friends in the wine world and in the wine locations. So just getting to be a deeper part of that would be kind of fun, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny. I've interviewed 1,500 entrepreneurs, and every single one of them, when I ask questions like that, about like what's going on in their life outside of it, it's really interesting is when people hit a point of success, right? Any entrepreneur hits this point of success. One of two things happens. They either go head down and become an Elon Musk who's like, hey, I'm going to change the industry, right? He keeps trying to shift and conquer industries. Or you have the other people who they almost go back to like grassroots human needs. Like, hey, I'm going to go back to farming. I'm going to go back to housing and back to some of these other kind of more base needs. It's really interesting. So that it honestly doesn't surprise me that that's what you're going for right now.
Yeah, I think, if you look at Maslow, it would be then you go for fulfillment, right? When you've got everything else done. So then it's whatever causes you to find fulfillment.
Yeah, which is so awesome. And I would agree with that. And
you may have frozen.
It's funny you mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs because I talked to somebody just the other day and they were talking about right before fulfillment is ego, is it not? I think it's ego. It's the one right before it.
Is that it? Okay, cool.
Ego or status. But he's like, most people get stuck right there because they keep butting up against it. And it was actually really interesting. He was a psychologist, so he obviously worded it much better than me. That's like 3 episodes ago for those of you who are listening to the podcast consistently.
Nice.
So, Roland, when it comes to acquisitions, right, you've probably answered about 5,000 questions about how, why, where to make acquisitions. Can you just give us a little 1 to 2 minute synopsis of why that is the fastest way to scale or to grow your own portfolio through businesses?
I think that it's because of momentum, that if you are starting something from scratch, then you have a lot to go through to get to the momentum phase where things are kind of clicking along and you've got product market fit and you've got predictable selling systems and growth engines and an operating system and the staff to make all that stuff go. And so if you want to start something without having to wait for the inertia to build and get the momentum, right, then I don't think there's any faster way than acquiring to do that. If you already have a business, then I look at what are to me, there's 7 real areas that you have challenge-wise that you might face in a business, and acquisitions can solve a lot of those. So like if you need more customers, you want more sales, you want to grow the business, that's a horizontal integration where you simply buy a competitor. If it's I need more leads, then you can acquire media. If you need capacity and infrastructure, then you can acquire teams. They even have a word for it called Aquire, right? To get a whole group of whatever it is that you need. If you want to increase your sales and your average order value, then you can acquire things that are other people's products and services. If you want to get a continuity of income and increase your lifetime customer value, you can acquire things that have recurring revenue. If you want to increase your profit margins, then you can acquire your supply and distribution chain. And if you want to have innovation, so you have new things to offer people, you can acquire intellectual property. So I like it because otherwise you would have to build media, which takes a long time. You would have to, literally double your business overnight. Not many people can do that without acquiring somebody that's already got the same number of customers they've got. And, rather than hiring a whole software development team or an engineering team or an R&D or sales team to go and get one that already exists, it's over and over and over, all of those things. There's just, to me, no faster way than to take something that already exists, particularly if it's part of your value chain.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. I could not have phrased it better. So I appreciate you for saying that. It's interesting. For those of you listening to this show, most of you know we evangelize this a lot, right? Of saying, hey, instead of trying to build it yourself, because it always comes down to a question of cost. It's probably just cheaper to hire somebody. I promise you it's not. It's just as much time to hire and train a whole new team, guys. So I appreciate your assessment on that, Roland. And I do want to ask to just kind of give, I guess, context here to our audience. People who are running marketing agencies in particular, being one of the primary listeners of this show, where would you recommend they start with acquisitions? Because, you mentioned intellectual property, marketing, leads, sales, all that. Would you recommend they go acquire? Somebody's doing $500,000 a year. Do you think they should acquire IP, or where do you think they should sit?
Well, that's why I like doing it by challenge. So say, what do you want the most? If you're thinking, do I want to grow my customer base? Do I need more leads? Do I need more capacity? Do I need more innovation? If that's where you start, instead of, I don't know, I can acquire anything. It's okay, well, what do you want the most? Maybe your sales are fine. You're just not making enough profit right now. So then to me, it's, let's go for supply and distribution chain. Or maybe it's, man, we get sales, but every month we've got to wake up and get new customers because we're doing one-off jobs. Then it's, how do we get, continuity? So I like letting the need of the business dictate what it is that you're looking to acquire.
Love that. If you're having a lot of things come to mind, I got to jot notes over here. It's interesting, Roland. For me, I found very early on for us, marketing, we were a marketing agency, marketing podcasts, but very quickly we realized that lead gen for ourselves was a problem. So I tried building out all these different lead generation systems, honestly, mildly successfully. But the second we decided to merge with another company, actually, lead flow stopped being an issue. To the point now, this is 3 years later. Now we literally don't have a lead problem. People ask me all the time, hey, can I generate leads for you? I'm like, you can, but I don't need them right now. We literally can't take them on. And then we've acquired a sales company for that same reason. We're in the stage right now where we're saying IP, IP, IP. And it's simply because, for those of you listening, it's simply because we looked at our business model and our valuation, had a SEC fiduciary guy came over, and Series 66, he came over, looked at it and said, hey, even with all this revenue come in, you're really not worth hardly anything. And we're going, what? We're generating, millions in revenue, and we're not even really worth anything. And he's like, well, you don't have any IP. So that's what we've been trying to do, is to acquire that IP. So I love that you bring that up, because I'm going, okay, it's also solidifying for me, hey, we're taking the right steps.
Yeah. And it's really, it's not, it wouldn't be that you're not worth anything. The first thing that I would think about, if you're looking particularly in a digital marketing agency or any service business like that, is the business able to run without you? Because if it is, then you are not owner operated, which puts you in a different category of valuation than if you are required to be there. And so if you can leave the business and go away for a year and come back and it's in as good or better shape as when you left, then you can consider yourself not an owner operator. So the first thing I would say is, if you are an owner operator across most industries, in I would say in a digital marketing agency, for us, you're probably looking at a 1 to 2 times profit valuation. And, and that's rough, because that means you get basically a year of, of what you would otherwise get. But it makes sense, because what somebody's buying at that point is a job. And also, in terms of marketability, the universe of potential buyers is only people that already own an agency or that are looking for a job. And so that first step of saying, if I'm required to be here, how can I make it, what would have to be true so that I don't have to be here? Because the minute that you do that, you're probably jumping up to between a 2 and a 4, right? X. Yeah. And, and that's a pretty significant bump, right? I mean, you're at least getting double what you would get, and maybe getting 4 times what you would get. So like that very first thing, and you're valued on EBITDA instead of SDE, which is just a different way of calculating profit. But jumping from SDE to EBITDA is a huge increase also. So like you get kind of a double bump. A lot of people don't think about that. How do I calculate seller discretionary earnings or SDE versus how do I calculate EBITDA? Well, when you convert one to the other, you're going to find you get a lot bigger bump on the EBITDA than you do on the SDE. So that alone is a great place to start. And then it's okay, well, when can I, and by having professional management also, by the way, you increase dramatically the universe of potential buyers because now you don't have to work in the business. You're not buying a job. So the people that are going to buy your company could be anyone that might want to add digital marketing, which could be a strategic play for a company that's just looking for an internal team, right? So like instantly you get a whole lot more buyers, which means that you can be a little bit more discriminating in what you're asking for. So both of those are I think, important things to think about. And then it is possible without IP to have a really good financial play. But if you can add some sort of IP to make the business tech enabled, then there's a completely different valuation and you're going to bump up maybe double again. So like if you think about, is there an internal SaaS that we use to help our customers? Or is there some tech that we can acquire, ideally, or build, God forbid, that will make our business differentiated from everybody else, that creates some sort of moat? And therefore, we've got what we call defensible IP, meaning that it gives us some sort of competitive advantage and we can exclude other people from doing it because we're able to protect it through trademark, copyright, patent, whatever.
Yeah. See, that's brilliant. That's what we've actually been trying to pivot our focus to, is to incorporate the tech side so that we can be worth, obviously, a higher multiple. So again, like I said, you're solidifying my beliefs. So I appreciate that. And those listening, you might be going, EBITDA, SDE, all these big terms, right? If you're lost on this, go check out Business Lunch Podcast or go check out RolandFrasier.com. He has a lot of really awesome material on this. You've probably seen his ad. You'll see his face. You're like, oh, it's that guy. It's Roland Frasier. You're everywhere, man. Which actually kind of leads me to my next question, Roland, is, you've done 1,000 different acquisitions at this point, right? Acquisitions or exits or whatnot. Acquiring companies like that and at that scale, my guess is you've cracked the code on how to take them from where they are to where they can be. Because I look at a lot of even our acquisitions, we've brought on a couple and they've done very well, gratefully, but we've also seen a lot of my buddies will go buy these businesses and it just doesn't work out. What do you typically find are kind of the main reasons why they succeed or why they fail?
Yeah, the truth is that if you look at the statistics for M&A, for mergers and acquisitions, more fail than succeed. I think that is skewed by the motivation of investment bankers to make fees by getting companies to acquire. And there's, so I think a lot of times they're not acquiring strategically. They're acquiring, hoping that something is going to work out, or they haven't thought it very well through, or there's a roll up that's going on. And so there's 70 acquisitions in a year and you couldn't possibly hope to integrate all those people in. But I think the key is that you start with why are you going to do an acquisition? And then you say, for me, around the 7 different things that I mentioned before, what do I need to solve for? And then you say, will an acquisition solve for that? The answer is probably yes, if you're asking one of those 7 questions. And then it's, okay, how are we going to go about that in a way that ensures that, number one, we are in a position to have the capacity to do an acquisition? And so if you're in the whirlwind of everything and everybody in the business is crazy busy, it will only be a distraction, and it probably won't get the attention that it needs to actually succeed. It needs, if you're going to do an acquisition, you need to in advance say, who are the stakeholders in the acquisition and how does it integrate into what we've already got, and who's going to own it? And meaning, who's going to have ownership of the acquisition and making it work out, as opposed to who's going to have title to it. So right. I think that's thing one. Then thing two is be very sure when you're doing your due diligence that it's not just financial due diligence, but it's also cultural due diligence. Is it are you a customer focused, we want people to be happy, customer journey kind of company, or are you a pirate ship of, we, eat what you kill, and, we're all about the money and, just getting more accounts? And there are different businesses that are different things. And they try to take those square pegs and jam them into the round holes of different cultures. And it's pretty much never going to work when you do that. So if you can just do those two things, then I think that you end up having kind of a hard time having it not work out positively for you.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, and I kind of want to wrap this point up from acquisitions, because I told you I wasn't going to talk about acquisitions with you the whole time. And here we are almost 20 minutes in. I am curious if you could give our audience one activity they could go do today to get started on this journey of acquisitions, what would you tell them to do?
I would say first, think about what is the big challenge in your company. Without thinking about acquisitions, think about what are the big challenges in the company, and what do you want to do to help fix those things. And if you can identify that challenge first, then you start so far ahead, because I think so many people say, I'm going to do an acquisition, and then the first thing that they all say is, okay, we got to acquire a competitor, right? But that's probably not the first thing that you want to acquire. You probably want to acquire capacity or leads. If you're already full of leads, then cool. You probably want to acquire capacity so that then when you do acquire a competitor, you have the ability to handle the work, and you've got the people there that are going to be responsible for it. I think that's the big thing, is be strategic when you are starting this, and understand that you're kind of getting a whole new company. So you want to be sure that the people that are there are going to stay. You want to be sure that they're going to harmonize with who you've got. And then you need a plan for how does that company fit into the company you've got? Does it stay autonomous within the people that it's got, with just somebody having a direct report to somebody in your company? Or is it something that's actually going to be subsumed as a department of a part of your company that you've already got? Because that's going to matter to you, and it's also going to matter to the people you're bringing in. And everybody should have a very clear understanding and expectation of what does post-closing integration life look like now before you do anything.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. And it's funny to me. Have you heard of Homey, Roland?
Yes.
Homey. Yeah. So they've got a whole new innovative process for buying a home. And it was interesting. So we live in Idaho. We drive down Utah where they're founded. We drive down there all the time, and they've got 500 billboards along this highway. I mean, they're all over, and they're multi-series ones where it's a 3 or 4 billboard message.
Yep.
And they had a message I thought was so interesting, is this is such a big purchase. It's a huge purchase. Why are you paying 3% or 6% commissions or whatever? And why aren't you thinking that through? Why aren't you vetting your real estate agent or whatever before you go through it? Because we usually just, oh yeah, one of my neighbors is a real estate agent, I'm going to go talk to them because they're a dime a dozen. But it's interesting. I think even my initial attitude towards buying businesses was that same way. I'm well, I need to buy more businesses. Like you said, competitor was the first thing that came to mind. And we went down the rabbit hole, 6 months of my life wasted on trying to acquire a competitor, and we never actually sealed a deal. And it kind of burned me out from buying businesses for a minute. And then I had somebody else come on my show and was like, well, why would you buy a competitor? You need lead gen, you need more lead gen. I just remember for myself having that crazy mental shift too. So I'm glad you brought that to the table. So I want to pivot the conversation here for a second too, because your podcast, Business Lunch Podcast, what does that do for you and your business? Because you're a marketing genius. I'm just going to throw it out there, and you're a humble guy, so you're just going to throw it off your shoulders here. But being somebody so actively involved in marketing, why is podcasting part of your process, and what does it do for you?
I think it's a really great distribution channel for your content to reach qualified people who want to engage more deeply with you than they could in a lot of other ways. So, I like the podcast because you get the entire podcast network and universe, which if you look at the demographics of that market, it's a higher end market in terms of income and net worth and education, all of those things. And then on top of that, you can use that content on YouTube, which gives you a giant additional exposure because podcasts are consumed voraciously on YouTube as well, which a lot of people don't know. And then it provides, it's kind of like in marketing, when I was first really getting into direct response marketing, I started in infomercials. And so did 16 infomercials for lots of different products. We did, hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. And the infomercial was the top of the chain. It was the big thing that you started with that had the highest margin and the greatest engagement of anything you could do. And then you went from infomercials to 120-second spots to 60-second spots to 30-second to 15-second. And then you went to home shopping, and then you went to catalogs, and then you went to direct response, and then you went to credit card inserts and mailer inserts and things like that. And ultimately you end in retail, which is the least amount of engagement, the most competition for attention, and the lowest margin. So I look at podcast at the top of the chain of distribution in terms of content consumption, because you and I come on here and we create a video that's 20, 30, 60 minutes long. And that's very good long form content. And then we release contemporaneously on this multiple network of podcasts with all kinds of audiences consuming from iTunes to Spotify to all the other places we might go. Then we also simultaneously post the long form on YouTube. But then our content team is able to go and chop that content up and take the nuggets and go to reels and shorts and all of the other things, and all the way down to ads for the podcasts that we do that lure people back into the deeper thing that just capture people's attention, which might be short, very short form ads. So I see it as very similar to what I learned in that direct response, is that it's a whole hierarchy of content. And I think podcast sits at the top of it. And then we don't have to create all of that other content because it's coming primarily from this. And at worst, it creates ideas for our team to take content or ask us to create specialized content there. So I think it's kind of crazy not to do it, because it does that on the content side. And then on the engagement side of networking, I can get you or, Richard Branson or all these other people we've had on the podcast to come and spend time with us, because they're interested in getting their message out, which allows us to have the before and after the recording conversations that lead to networking and deals and more things. So to me, it accomplishes objectives across the board.
Yeah, I agree. Can I use that as a commercial for our company? That would be great.
Yeah, 100%.
From the mouth of Roland Frasier. I agree completely. And I was just curious if you're using it that way, because, I look at podcasting. Most people look at it, it's just a branding thing. It's about reach. But I agree with you. It's a repurposing behemoth. I mean, you can use it for everything that you do, and then the networking with it is unbelievable. Yeah. I attribute everything that we've done successfully to my podcast, 100%.
Yeah, and if you were going to be, super intentional about it, then you have your team research in advance the topics that you're going to cover based on search demand, and then you release your snippets out on TikTok, YouTube, Shorts, and Reels and articles based on the questions that you're answering that your data told you that you should be covering, which then becomes this huge spider web of content that's driving people to your pillar, SEO desires.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to a lot of agency owners in particular, obviously being the ones who listen to our show. And we've seen that, and most of them are looking at it. Oh, but I could just run Facebook ads. Oh, I could post on Facebook Live. There's just something so different about somebody coming on a podcast. I love going on podcasts too. I've done like 300 or so of them myself. And
it's not even to grow my show. It's just simply because of the networking of it. It's like next level networking. It's unbelievable.
The networking is fantastic. And I think it causes you to reflect differently to both, like as an interviewer and an interviewee. It's really good for you. It keeps you sharp because you'll get distinctions. You'll even hear yourself saying something that you wouldn't have thought to say before because somebody asked a question from a different angle. I think it's really good for sharpening the saw as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I wish we could go down this rabbit hole for hours because obviously this is my passion. I love podcasting, and I'm a little bit biased. So, Roland, I do appreciate you coming on here though today. And I just want to ask you one final question to wrap up this interview. And once again, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your wisdom with us. So for our audience, if you give them one marketing tactic that they could go out and apply today, what would that be?
I think it depends on what you're trying to sell, but like in the digital space, since we have a lot of digital marketing agency people, I've just really found lately the free challenge to be insanely great. We've done across our companies about 60 challenges over the last couple of years, and we've done paid, we've done free, we've tested across all different things. But like compared to a webinar, a mini webinar, a masterclass, a virtual event that's a 1 day, or 2 day, there's just nothing that we found that engages people like a few days of a challenge that's free, followed by selling a very high ticket thing. If you have a high ticket thing, and if you don't, then look at your value ladder and find one.